Okay, thank you very much, Bianca, for your introduction, and thanks to everyone for coming along today to listen to our talk. My name's Beth. I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Glasgow in the School of Chemistry, and yes, we're joined by a plethora of our team. My colleagues Francis and Cosma are here, and also 4 of our 6 student partners. So I think I saw Aidan and Conor and David and Claire. I think they're all in the audience somewhere. I've lost you now, but I think you're all there. So I think we're all going to maybe say just a little bit today about the projects that we have got running at the moment. So we actually have 3 student staff partnerships running at the moment, and we're going to give you just a little brief summary of each of those. They're all at slightly different stages in their development. So again, we'll try and explain to you where we're at with those. So like many institutions, the University of Glasgow recognises the value of such collaborative projects, and as such we were able to secure funding through the University of Glasgow's Student Staff Partnership Scheme. So it meant that we could properly engage our student partners and actually pay them a salary, which I'm sure that's not why they all wanted to do it, but we think they deserve some sort of monetary payment for their efforts. And the projects that we're going to talk about, I think, all follow the spirit of today's conference about active learning. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the first project. Myself and Claire will talk a little bit about that, and then I'm going to hand over to the rest of the team. So our project involves myself and Tess, who can't be here today, Claire, who is here, which is great, and Cosma. So the 4 of us are involved in this project. And it's to try and introduce peer assessment to assess practical skills in one of our first year labs, the quantitative one lab. Now this is a truly student-led project because it follows on from work which Tess was looking at for her final year project. Tess was looking at alternative methods of assessment in higher education, and in particular Tess was conscious that our school lab work is primarily assessed by lab report, and it's generally thought that this type of assessment doesn't appropriately assess or provide feedback on a student's practical ability. And in fact, through Tess's project, she actually found that almost all of the students who took part in the pilot agreed with that observation. So following on, as I say, from Tess's findings in her project, and also publicised requests, I guess, requirements from our professional body, the Royal Society of Chemistry, we decided that we would try and introduce, as I say, this new type of assessment for our practical work. Now, we're very much at the start of the project, and that's where Tess will be finishing off, but Claire will be carrying on the project for the rest of the academic year. And as I say, we're going to try and introduce some peer assessment into our lab assessment, and we will we'll survey our students and find out how they feel about it. So I'm going to finish there. As I say, this project's very much at the start, and perhaps we can come back in a future conference and share our findings with you. But before we move on to the next project, I'd just like to introduce Claire and ask her maybe to share just a few minutes of her impression and the driving force for Claire taking part in this project, and what she feels she can bring to the project as a partner. So I'm going to stop talking now and pass over to Claire.
Thanks, Beth. As you said, my name is Claire. I'm going into my second year at the University of Glasgow as a biochemistry student. So I've actually just come out of doing this quantitative 1 lab last year. It was by far one of my favorite courses. I really enjoy labs in general, but just being able to interact more thoroughly with the course material. And Cosma and I had a great conversation at the end of lab about, things that went well, things room for improvement. And so he mentioned that this project was happening, and I was super interested in kind of seeing where that went. And what I think the value like peer assessment really lies for chemistry is I saw a lot of students struggling with confidence and knowledge in terms of lab skills. It can be pretty intimidating to go into the lab and not exactly know what you're doing and not know what the protocol is. And so I really like the idea of having this alternative method of assessment, one with your peers to encourage like collaboration in the lab and also to kind of minimize student anxiety, but really just to gain confidence few reasons, but mainly just gain confidence in the why certain things are important to do. I think is a big thing for students. When you can understand why something is happening, more likely to follow along and make those connections. And as Beth said, this is kind of the start of the project, but I'm so excited to see where it goes. Every single time we meet, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm part of something like this. But yeah, Tess and I are currently working on kind of rearranging the rubric that she used for her final year project, and just everything is, going great right now, but I'm really enjoying kind of this process of working through making sure that when we implement this, the project next year for students, that it goes as smoothly as possible. And I'm really looking forward to kind of engaging with students next year and getting their feedback on how this goes. Obviously, it's the first time running, so yeah.
Thanks so much, Claire. Just to add, Claire is joining us from very early in the morning in the USA, so that's dedication for you. I'm going to pass over to Francis, I think. Is that correct, Francis?
That's right, yeah. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Beth. So I'm going to talk to you about the first partnership that we had. The motivation for this was in early 2020. I'm head of level 2 chemistry, so I surveyed our second year students about the way we teach chemistry and which methods they like. So we have lectures and labs and tutorials and a thing called ITUs, which are interactive teaching units, which we'll talk about a bit more later. And I asked the students which methods were most effective for them to learn chemistry and how comfortable they felt with the different methods. And the strong message that came back was the students are really passive learners. So they want to sit in a lecture theatre and be talked at. They don't like active learning. They don't like unknown activities, and they're quite shy when it comes to group work. So this was just before the pandemic. So then when our students came back face-to-face this year, we thought, well, it's going to be an even bigger problem now. So we had to put some steps in place to help address this issue. So we applied for our first student-staff partnership. If we give the next slide, please, Beth. And the two things that we decided to look at in the partnership was first of all, to develop a sense of community within the students. Their first year had more or less all been online. So they didn't know each other, they didn't feel members of the school, they didn't know their way around campus. And the study had also shown that the students had low levels of self-efficacy. So they wanted us to mark their work and tell them they were doing well, or they wanted answers to questions to see if they were correct or not. And these students are going to be scientists soon, and they'll be working on problems where there's no right answer. They don't know if they're doing it right. So it's important that they start to judge their own work and evaluate how well they're doing and get that internal feedback. So next slide, please, Beth. If we look at the literature, we decided that the best way to develop internal feedback was to take a three-pronged attack. We would, first of all, look at comparisons. So students are always comparing themselves to each other. How did you do in that test? Could you understand that lecture? So could we formalise this natural comparison and help the students to grow through it? We also realised that if we want the students to engage with their peers, that we have to structure it and we have to provide structured activities to help them develop. And the third thing is there's no point in just having one session, one afternoon during the year. This is something we have to do again and again throughout the year to build up the students' confidence. So next slide, please, Beth. We decided to start peer study groups. and I'm now going to pass over to our two student partners, David and Conor. David and Conor are third year students, so they had just finished second year when they came into the partnership, and they knew what it was all about and they could relate well to the second year students. So they're now going to tell us about what we actually did and their experiences of being student partners.
Hello everyone, I'm Conor. There's David there as well.
Hi there.
So we kind of organised and set up these peer study groups, working with Francis closely. So we organised them weekly for about an hour, and they were twice a week. And I think the thing that we focused on at the start was to try and make it as like kind of like an informal structure, opposed to the kind of like sitting down in a lecture theatre and being given information. So that was the first thing we done.
So if I was to give a little bit of a reflection on what we did, one way in which they helped us as well as helping the students was it allowed us to reflect on what we'd learned in the past year. And so through engaging with second year's questions in terms of answering them, and also in pointing them in the right direction of where they could find the answers for things we were less confident on, that really helped to kind of establish and develop our own knowledge of the subject, which was very useful.
Mm-hmm. And I think as the weeks progressed as well, you definitely noticed the confidence of the students progressing, even outside of the subject, socially as well. I think after 2 years of pandemic conditions and not having the same social experiences that normal students would, it was really great to see that we started to see friend groups being formed from the sessions that are still continuing on to this day. And the students would gain more confidence in talking to each other about the problems. They would take the problems outside of the study groups, which I thought was really important to see.
So another aspect of what we did was we noticed that a lot of students in second year, they'd like to have more materials that they can think about and maybe try questions that relate to the work that they're doing from their lectures. So we've started to develop a problems question book for the second year course, which looks at kind of allowing them to just spend more time with the material that they've been learning and develop that further. So that's something that should hopefully be ready for the next year.
Yeah, I think it was interesting to do it as a kind of the start of the first year of it being done, and obviously we were the last year to not have this. And I think, I don't know if we've looked at the statistics yet, but I think that like people's grades definitely benefited from having this resource that we didn't have. I know myself, when I was in second year, I didn't know anyone who did chemistry at all. I didn't meet a single chemistry student until third year. So I didn't even have someone to ask or to look over questions with or to collaborate with. So I think this is just another resource that really, really encourages people to help each other and really develops learning.
I think more to that point, even just the social aspect for the second years, just knowing that there were other people in the same boat as them, and knowing where to find those people outside of the lectures was a key part of what this project provided for them, which they expressed on many occasions how useful that was.
I think it just added the personal side of what can be quite a tough and stressful like subject, that to have lecturers come in and to see them outside of a formal learning environment where they can like talk to them, call them by their first names and have a kind of casual chat about the subject with them was just really important. Because I know like from my own experience, you can feel quite isolated in the subject, just to do with like how difficult it can be and stressful. So I think to add some kind of like personability to it, which is really useful for the students to have.
So to sum up, I think the project for us was beneficial in terms of our own personal academic development. It was useful in terms of developing our soft skills in just communicating with the second years and building friendships and networking with them. It was also really good to look back at the second year material and ground our knowledge base more through the chance to explain things and to kind of re-engage with that which we've learned previously, which is still, useful for us to develop. And finally, it also gave us this perspective on being part of the School of Chemistry, but both from the kind of student and staff perspective, to see the inner workings of the university and appreciate that more. So it's been both academically and personally fruitful, and I hope that this sets a kind of precedent for the success of the project in future years.
Thanks very much, David and Conor. So this was my first experience of student partnerships, and both of them have been really fantastic to work with. I've really enjoyed the partnership. So I mentioned these things called interactive teaching units. So in a way, this is our flagship active learning activity. It's very active, lots of teamwork, there's lots of developing graduate attributes, and we've found, for us, it's ticking lots of boxes of things we should be doing, but the students didn't seem to like it so much. It was out their comfort zone. So we really had to address that problem. And I'm now going to pass over to Cosma to tell you about these ITUs and the changes we've made.
Indeed, I'll try and wrap up within the next 2 or 3 minutes. This is the third student partnership that we're talking to you about, and it's with Francis that I'm doing this, and also, of course, Aidan, who is here with us, and Oscar, who unfortunately can't join us today. Yes, so what is an interactive teaching unit? It's a 3-hour session that we run twice a year at the University of Glasgow in chemistry, and it's one tutor. If you can actually switch to the next slide, please. It's with one tutor and 12 students in one room together for 3 hours. We have 150 students in second year, and so that's actually a lot of staff time. And so within that group of 12 students that are generally in a room on their own, they break up into even smaller groups of just 3 or 4, to look, to solve problems, look at different aspects of one overall theme, which could be about green chemistry overall or about refrigerants overall, and they practice these graduate attributes, these transferable skills. For instance, by presenting, one group presenting to the other groups, and also within the group they're practicing teamwork. But as Francis said, in 2019, 2020, we found that students weren't actually picking up on those opportunities to learn that. So in 2020, we recreated the whole thing as an online resource. I can't remember why exactly and what happened in 2020, 2021. Yes, we added this, or Francis added this, a reflective task on graduate attributes where students before the session had to, try to get to use OneNote, our platform, which we presented about last year, and but actually actively think like what are the graduate attributes that which one is most important for me, and sort of get them to engage with that. And later we then presented to the students, well, actually this is what employers thought. We also developed 2 new sets of content over the last few years. And if Beth, if you could switch to the next slide, please. Then now coming back to in-person delivery, we just used OneNote again at computers, but that didn't quite work as well as it did online. Online, students really enjoyed it because it was working together it was the first time they'd actually seen other students on their course and being able to engage with them. And yes, so sorry, 5 more minutes, but that includes questions, so we'll need to really rush.
Yes, absolutely. I didn't want to
I'll just no, thank you. But 5, so lack of discussion, and so when we came back, we found we needed to do something, and so we've got Aidan and Oscar on board, and these points that we're that are listed there on the slide, what we're doing in our SSPS, our staff student partnership scheme, are adapting a content, modifying the delivery format, and reevaluating sort of lots of different modes in which we could assess these, not just by SE. But Aidan is going to talk you through those on the next slide.
Yep. Yeah, I'll be quite quick. So yeah, this year we're trying to change we're trying to redevelop both the 2 ITUs that we have. We've only just started working on the first one just now. But yeah, so we're trying to specifically, in terms of adapting the content, we want to have more of a focus on interaction and discussion, because it's an interactive teaching unit. Like it needs to be interactive in some form. So we're redesigning it to have a lot more. There is like after they do the generic, like look at these papers, answer some questions, they have to create like a presentation in like individual groups, and then sort of present that to the rest of the people in the ITU. And then each group they'll be given time to like go back into their groups and formulate some questions that they will ask like to the people presenting. And hopefully that'll just promote some discussion about whatever they're talking about between, yeah. But also another big issue was that we didn't have a lot. One of the big issues last year was that there wasn't enough time to cover the content that we want to cover. So this year we're thinking of not stripping it down, but we're trying to put the right amount that the students get what they need to get for it, basically. And we have a big focus on, we want to try and grab little pieces of information that we get from the lecturers and sort of find a way to weave them in to this ITU, so that the things they're actually doing in the ITU, they can look at it and be like, oh, well, this is from this lecture. So I can see how or why this lecture is relevant to like chemistry, or why it's like how it all pieces together, which I think Claire said before, like understanding where everything links is quite important, especially for me. But yeah, I mean, but mainly we're focusing on modifying the delivery format, because like I said, last year's one was online and it didn't really translate very well. But this year there's two big differences. One, we have these new teal rooms, the technology enhanced active learning rooms, which are pretty cool because they have little clusters of like 6 or 7, and they all have these microphones and they have screens at each table that can directly connect to the main screen. So it really like it enables like sharing between the different groups, and it's like just it makes it easy to present. And yeah, and another big thing is that we're thinking of splitting the ITUs over 2 days, with the first day being like the normal, well, not normal, but similar to the ITUs that we've done previously, and a second day that is focused specifically on like these graduate attributes that we talked about, like specifically focused on like learning how to be able to read academic literature and be able to like understand just what like different essays and and the second day we'll be giving the students various like pieces of text and stuff to read over, and we'll show them like the rubrics of maybe an essay or two, and sort of show them like what is expected of them when they're asked to write an essay or like whatever they're asked to do, because I feel like a lot of students don't really know what they're asked of. But yeah, sorry.
You.
And then just the last thing, sorry.
Oh yes.
The assessment we're thinking, previously the assessment was just an essay at the end of the ITU, and we're thinking for the first ITU we're going to keep it the same, because again essay writing is a thing that we don't really get the opportunity to do throughout the rest of the course, so we're keeping that. But for the second ITU, which we haven't really worked on yet, but it's very up in the air, but we've got a whole like we can do it like any form of assessment. Like we've been thinking maybe posters, group assessments, peer reviews, like presentations, anything that like puts like the interactive teaching units, you know. But yeah, sorry, I rambled a bit, but that's basically it. It's all very up in the air at the moment, but we're narrowing it down.
Thank you so much. I'm really sorry we ran out of time, but if you have any questions, please, I think Beth or Cosma have shared a link to a Padlet in the chat. There's also a QR code, and also don't forget that we have a conference Padlet. I will share a link in the chat where you can always keep in touch with the presenters and ask any questions you might want after this session. So we now have to move on really quickly.
Yeah, we would be really interested to hear if anybody else has been involved in any student staff partnerships. Thank you so much for having us. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.